Good morning and welcome to Coffee with Dan. This morning I have with me Mr. Fernando, who is one of the most senior civil servants in the country that has ever produced and a statesman. He has a Bachelor of Arts degree from University of Ceylon and a Master's degree in Business Administration from University of Sri Jawadhanapura. Today the topic is on public administration in the country, and welcome to the studios, Mr. Austin Fernando.
Yeah, nice to be here with you.
Thank you, sir. So let me start our discussion on asking, now we know that the public service is a very important element in today's administration of the state. And there are a lot of criticisms against public service that we are not really up to the standards of serving the people. What about your thoughts on this?
Yes, who is not being criticized in this country? You take the President, Prime Minister, Board of Ministers, Cabinet Ministers, leaders of opposition, political parties, secretaries, heads of departments, heads of corporations. Everyone is being criticized when people find that they are not doing their job properly. But then that feeling that someone is not doing the job properly or someone is doing it extraordinarily well is a matter of opinion. But definitely there are weaknesses in all these sectors. You find weaknesses. So in the public service also, I will devote myself only to the public service, because I am not a politician or a businessman, so I can't comment on them. But about the public service, yes. Some people say that the status has been deteriorating. Some people say, no, it is not so. But anyway, the general feeling is that it is not up to standard. But don't forget that it is a public service who runs the elections without any problems. There is a public service who runs the disaster situations. And then imagine the situation in the conflict period. It is a public service which ran the lives of people in the north and east. And that is the situation. So public service has performed extremely well in certain areas. And in certain areas, it has not. So I think it's a matter of training. It's a matter of devotion. It's a matter of leadership. It's a matter of supervision. It's a matter of sometimes even legal problems which public service finds. So therefore, to blatantly say that the public service is not doing its role properly is unfair, unjustified, and cannot be stood with. But certain instances could be there, and that has to be accepted.
This morning in Coffee with Dan, I have the Presidential Secretary, Mr. Austin Fernando. Apart from being the Secretary to the President, His Excellency Maithripala Sirisena, he is also the Chairman of the Telecommunication Regulatory Commission, what we commonly call the TRC. So my next question to you, sir, is that when we talk about public service, employees of the state are very important for us. And having the best set of employees, as you mentioned very correctly, giving them training and making them suit to the present administration is very important. And we know that there is a big demand for the public service, especially among the younger generation. They tend to seek employment in the public service because of many aspects like job security and so forth. So how should the future of employees of the state be designed?
Yeah, I don't agree with you that there is a big demand for public service from the younger generation. Younger generation is more interested in getting into the private sector for several reasons. Private sector people, they get when you are sometimes an advanced level qualified person, he goes as an intern or just a raw recruit to a big firm. The salary they get is the salary which a public servant gets after 15-20 years of service. So therefore, for immediate gains, the younger generation looks at that area of employment. And the other thing is the public service has a different way of recruitment to public service. Now, for example, if you take a SLAS officer, there's a examination, interview, and then they are selected. If you take a clerk, management assistant, that is the same way it happens. But then the way how you are put through the mill in the public service is different from what it is in the private sector. Private sector gives a from the day of induction, they are given a real test of life. They are put through the whole mill and they become seniors with lot of experience and knowledge also. The public sector is not that developed to that extent. So therefore, the systems engaged from induction training to promotional prospects and the other perks people get, those are not that great in public sector. So therefore, the attraction is less. Having said that, the question is, how do we look at the futuristic problem? Now, the future in this country, as far as I am saying, I may be wrong, subject to correction. I'll say that the future of this country cannot be only through the public sector. Public sector has failed in certain areas. The number of institutions that are coming under Honorable Kabir Hashim is a good example of that. Most of these state institutions are not running at a profit. They are being subsidized by the government. Budget provision is given to pay their salaries, even pay their bonuses when they are making losses. So in that situation, to depend only on the public sector for production purposes, for marketing purposes, for which we don't have the expertise, we have not built up the caliber of officials, then it becomes a problem. Then people complain. To what extent it is right, I don't want to comment, that politicization has created certain situations where the best is not being recruited and trained and given responsibilities, and accountability is not mentioned. It doesn't matter for those people. So therefore, we have to looking at such situations also. Then the legal problems. We do not want to give so much of power to some of the board directors or the chairman or the managerial staff, because we want to have a hold. The ministries will like to have a hold on everything down there. So that type of attitude should change. And the other thing is, basically, we are going to be a country with PPPs, public-private partnerships. Now, in that case, how do you put the public service into the groove of working with the private sector is another. Then the public sector has a great role to play in developing the country. Now, for example, if you listen to the Minister of Finance or Secretary of Finance or some of the Prime Minister and all that, President, all of them say we want foreign direct investment to come here. Now, we call it FDIs. If the FDIs to come here, the servicing part of a FDI which is coming from abroad or some other investor from domestic Sri Lankan investor, now there are certain things which have to be provided for development. It may be the infrastructure, the service facilitation, maybe electricity, maybe water, maybe telecommunication, maybe communication, then land. Such facilities have to be provided by the government. So the government servant's role, the public officer's role, becomes very important to ensure that those investments which are coming from abroad and locally is given, the industry is given the best of facilitation for establishment. One problem which we do is there's a World Bank the calculation done on the east to do business in a country. Now, where are we? We are at a low level. That is a problem of facilitation, number one, and the attitude of the politicians, of the bureaucrats, of the institutions which are here, servicing institutions, development institutions, banking and things like that. Now, they must be ready to be working with those things. So, public service will have a large role because the state banks are having a large role in development. Then the state institutions like the BOI, and they have this one window shop and things like that. Those are run by public servants. So the public servants for development purposes has a large role to play, and if we don't bring them up in that stature, then we will not be serving the public, because finally any investment coming to Sri Lanka will benefit the country, to the citizens of the country and the nation.
So let me turn my attention to a different area now. Now, sir, you being the secretary to the first citizen of this country, we know that the role of the president, His Excellency Maithripala Sirisena, is huge when it comes to development and also with regard to services such as social work and so forth. And we hear that the president is involved in bringing up new social or community-oriented programs such as building new hospitals for kidney patients and so forth. So when we consider the services of the president, where are we heading to?
I think the president is the person, he is the pivotal point, the apex of administration of this country. So when we have that type of person, any person who is holding that position has to look at all aspects of it. When the economic, it may be defense, it may be law and order, it may be development, health, agriculture, you name anything, he is the pivotal point. Now today he is laying the foundation stone with the Chinese ambassador in Sri Lanka for a big, large hospital in Polonnaruwa. Now he has been doing that type of thing. You would have been noticing in your newscasts and all that. So many things which he has to do. Now at the same time, his role as the president covers the area of diplomacy, area of law and order, defense, and all those areas. So he has to be looking at the interests of the military people, interests of the farmers, interests of the traders, interests of the investors and the financiers of the economy. He has to look at it. So his role is not a role of a donor like. It's a role of a leader who has to look at the totality of the country. It's a totality of the nation has to be looked at. So that's the role he has to be playing. And as a secretary, I had to be carrying out what he considers as important and what are his priorities. I had to know that, and I had to be servicing his attempts to do all those things what I said earlier.
This morning in Coffee with Dan, I have with me an important gentleman in this country. He's a secretary to the president, His Excellency Maithripala Sirisena. Mr. Austin Fernando has an illustrious and long career in public service, commencing from being a teacher at Nagoda Mahavidyalaya in Galle District. He started his career in administration when he entered the Ceylon Administrative Service in October 1967. He was trained as a cadet in Batiklo in the Eastern Province, and he started working for a department when he joined the Elections Commissioners Department in 1968. Thereafter, he held many important positions in district administration and later contributing in policy making as a head of department at the center. So why I introduced you in that way, sir, to ask about the disaster management in this country. That is a very important aspect nowadays, because Sri Lanka is facing some very strange situations with regard to environment and weather conditions. So how does the government or the office of the president handle this disaster management process?
Yeah, disasters are man-made and God-made. Some are made by God, some are made by man. Now, God-made ones, like we say a cyclone, earthquake or something like that, a tsunami, we have to take it up as it comes. From the notices we get about it, advance notice we get it, whatever we get it, we can do that. For example, the tsunami which took place in 2005, for example, 2004 December, that was something where it happened suddenly, and suddenly we had to be responding. The then president had to respond. Now the potential threat of a cyclone which are looming over us from 30th onwards, and which is now going away from us, we had time to be looking at it. We had time to be looking at it and responding. The one which happened on the 29th, that one was a little difficult one, because the notice given to us is said to be inadequate. But some people say it was adequate enough to be taking action. So there's a discrepancy in whatever we think about the situation. So that is one area. The man-made ones, there are several. Even a landslide in Kegol or Ratnapura is a man-made one, for as far as I know. It's a physically hill coming down, but if you look at the seriousness of it, you will find that some people have been cultivating or clearing land and leaving water to be seeping down, so that it can be helpful for sliding of a land. Now take the flood situation in certain areas. If you go and take sand in a very irresponsible, unplanned manner, then you are breaking down the bunds of the rivers, and then therefore you have to expect some sort of wash away, and then this silting of riverbeds and things like that, and then the waterways get changed. So those are man-made ones. Now you must do it. If you want to take sand, do it scientifically. You see, if you want to cultivate land on a hill, do it in a scientific manner. There are scientifically systematic ways of doing things. If you don't do that, then the man-made thing, which is seen as a natural, something seemingly a natural disaster of flood or even drought. Drought can be that, because the droughts sometimes happen because the jungles are cleared. Who does it? It's not the elephants who go and clear it, or it's not the wind that clears the jungles. Jungles are cleared by people. Irresponsible and nasty way of handling the timber exploitation happens. So therefore, drought also has some sort of a man-made disaster input. So therefore, if you don't do things to create awareness among people, then take very mitigatory type of activities, prevention activities. If you don't do, you will have disasters. You can't stop it. However much you cry, it is not of use. If the people don't get involved, if the administration don't get involved, if the politicians don't get involved, if the society, as civil society doesn't get involved, then this will continue. So that's a bad situation. And sometimes post-disaster activity is a different one. What the government can do, what the president can do. The president can get involved because he knows the numbers, he knows where to be assisting, he knows he can make representation to the international community, he can make representation to the business community to come and help us, he can get the public service moving towards one focused area. That the presidential secretariat and the president can do it. But other things like prevention and things like that, of course the president can direct them, but the problem is there are various institutions. If we have the wildlife department, we have the forest department, we have the government agents, we have the divisional secretaries, we have the provincial councils, we have provincial ministers, provincial secretaries, we have people's institutions. Now in India, there was one case when some people, the rich Mudal traders, were trying to cut down trees and take it away. It's women who went there. They called it Andolan. They went and Andolan is Sinhalese, you call Andolan. And what they did was they went and held the trees with their hands like this. They surrounded the tree, big tree, about 10-15 women going and in there, and they, okay, we won't allow you to cut. Now you can't cut it because women will get crushed. And the men also, then thereafter they came and chased off the traders who have got licenses from the bureaucracy. Now the bureaucracy also has to be keeping in mind, whatever the president does or the minister does here is cannot be done if the bureaucracy also doesn't do it. And the people don't get in and create the Andolan situation. If the jungles are hacked, let the Andolan takes place. But what happened is now the Andolan is, if a teacher is transferred, or if a tree falls across the electrical wires, people go and have Andolan with Yahapalne boards and all that held. That is not the Andolan which you should have. Andolan should be very directed, very focused, very well planned, and like that. But this If the bus doesn't run on a road, you make it andolan, Japan, and you blame the president, you blame the prime minister, you blame the minister. That is not the andolan which should happen. For disasters, let us have more andolans, but very focused, very planned, and very scientifically planned stuff, and not this closing down roads and not allowing the buses to move around. That will not bring disasters to an end.
This morning, the Coffee with Dan program is live in news.lk, and our dear listeners and viewers could view it in news.lk. So turning back to our discussion, we know that the long war we had brought the consequences of post-conflict rehabilitation issues in front of us. Rehabilitation, resettlement, reconciliation, all needs to be done by the government in place. So what action have the President's office or the different task force of His Excellency the President involved in this post-conflict rehabilitation, resettlement and reconciliation efforts?
The government, it's not only the president, it's the whole government and the whole country for that matter. We have to do something about this reconciliation part of it, rehabilitation, resettlement and all that. One thing is we have got a ministry for resettlement, and we have got a ministry for integration and reconciliation. So first one is handled by Honorable Swaminathan. The second one is by the president. But there's a big task force like thing, the organized system that looks after four major areas, which is coming in the Geneva Resolution 30/1. At the same time, it is an internationally acclaimed status that we should have. Number one, about the Sri Lankan context, we have the Office of the Missing Persons. This week or so, we will have the people appointed. And then once this week, within the next 14 days, definitely we should appoint the OMP. The names will be coming to me, to the President from the Speaker, Honorable Speaker. When it comes, we will appoint them. So what has happened to the missing persons will be looked at from this. Secondly, we have the reparation system. There is already some reparation system, and we have got about 2 billion rupees, if I remember right, to put up houses and various reparation activities. It has been given by the budget here. So it's the President's and the government's commitment for that. And I'm sure if it is more money, we will go for supplementary estimates most likely. Somehow we will ensure that the demand for money will be given for reparation for people people who are maimed and having various problems. And the the psychosocial rehabilitation, such things will be done. Then we have the constitution making process, which is very important. That is one long-term means of creating reconciliation, because some people think that development of roads and schools and hospitals, that will create the required reconciliation between the affected parties and the victims and their political supporters. No, it is not so. That is why the government has gone in for a constitution making process. But of course there is dissension whether it should be a brand new constitution or a amendment to the constitution or a mix of those things. The government has the government had this Constituent Assembly. They appointed the steering committee. The steering committee appointed 6 committees, and the 6 committees have given their reports. It amounts to about financing of these things, how the centre and the periphery should work, how the public administration should work. There are so many things that have been looked at. All those recommendations are not going to be accepted, because these are recommendations created by the parliamentary committee. And then we had the Lal Vijayanayaka committee report that has given certain ideas. Not that everything in that is accepted, but there are certain things that have been accepted, because it's a matter of balancing all these things. Lal Vijayanayaka committee, the subcommittee reports, and the parliament, and there are people who are against doing anything. regarding the constitution. Some people say don't touch it. So it's a very vivid type of feeling we have about that. But that is one way of looking at the long-term reconciliation has to be done through this. Then they talk about the power devolution of power, the various issues are coming up. But we see other things, very things that have been more or less agreed upon have been once again taken out and then publicized. That's another way of handling this by politicians. You can't help it. Politics is a diverse opinion-making system, so it has to be that. So we had to go through this one. Then there's only one thing which I am not very much conversant is about the accountability of these things. Well, there are proposals made by various people. There are people who are against some of the proposals. So, but little by little, our judicial system must be in a position to be handling this, some of the areas of accountability. But let us come to some sort of agreement on all these things, because we can't push through the things through the throats of Sri Lankans by force. We can't push it. So it has to be a very democratic process that has to go on, and the parliament is there. I am not one of them, so I don't know anything about what is happening in the parliament. But parliament is there. They have been given the mandate to do all these changes, so let them make the changes.
When it comes to this post-conflict reconciliation, there is some criticism against the government that it has failed to balance the North-South dialogue. Do you agree with me?
I think balancing the North and South dialogue, I mean, you mean the Northeastern and the other provinces,
yes,
I presume.
Exactly.
And that North-South dialogue, I think it is happening in a much bigger way than what it had been happening during the past regime. Past regime, the North and South dialogue was just nil or even minus. But now we have gone into a situation where for example, the leading Tamil party, TNA, comes and states that they are happy to take over certain things in a different way. They talk to the government better. They have the response. The response the president gets when he goes to North and East from the Tamil and Muslim community is in itself good indication of what we have achieved under this government in the North and South. If anyone is criticizing, I don't agree with them.
We also see that His Excellency the President is maintaining a very liberal policy when it comes to international relations. He visits countries where quite often and try to get the maximum support for Sri Lanka. So how does the position in international relations take place under the present regime?
I think the international relations during the past regime was so bad, people didn't look at us. Imagine, last week President was in Korea. He gets adding up of $500 million to be coming in as soft loans or something like that. And then the response he gets from various heads of states and all that, and I think the fact that we have relaxed our unnecessary stronghold on foreign powers. It's I think the reduction is a reason for that. We have better relation with India. We have better relation with Japan, China, America, UK. British government. So what else? Germans, everywhere we go, people take us seriously, and that means the criticism that we have not done anything, if there's any, is wrong, because we have definitely improved our situation. The way how we have been treated. The Indian government was not having anything to do with the previous regime, like towards the end of the war situation. So. Of course, Chinese, they were very nice to Sri Lankan government previously. They are nice to us also. There's nothing, we negotiate with them and get things done. So therefore, I don't see any reason to believe that we have not improved. We have improved, and we will be improving also.
So you being also the chairman of Telecommunication Regulatory Commission, of what we call the TRC, I would not make justice if I don't ask few questions about the TRC's activities. Now, about TRC, there is a recent budgetary move to regulate the telecommunication towers and also restrict further building of telecommunication towers. What's the rationale behind this?
This question you must ask the Secretary of Finance. He is the man who prepares the budget. But I think but I know for certain that because some of these service providers, they met me and discussed with me, and I have made my observations to the Treasury. Hold on for a while. I think that's the answer I can give you, because it's a matter where Honorable Mangala Samaravira and the Cabinet will have to decide on that. So I think we'll have to hold on. I think the representations have been made, and we are aware of the argument which is raised by telecommunication tower people, because I know the economics of it. Some tower is now being used by, say, 3 or 4 service providers, and then if they are going to be paying 200,000 each, or I think 200,000, I think, some amount of money, that may create a lot of problems. And then we have to have sometimes isolated towers sometimes for one company, one tower somewhere in very distant area. Those are issues that are there. We are aware of the problems of the service providers, and we have to wait for review of what the budget has decided. They have been doing it. A review of budget decisions had been happening, so I hope something favorable will happen, favorable to the service providers will happen. But it's not a matter where I can comment, because I have to only carry on what the Minister of Finance and the Secretary of Finance decides.
And also there is concern about the levies in the telecommunication sector at a time that the world telecommunication rates are slightly going down and making more people friendly. Our levies are quite high, and the users are facing some problems relating to the use of telecommunication devices such as mobile phones and so forth. So what action will TRC introduce in its futuristic affairs?
This also had been brought to our notice by the service providers, and we have told our staff there, the experts in the TRC, to study this and come back to us. Unfortunately, this had happened only last month. These things are coming up, so we will have to wait for that, and they are studying that. I am sure if there's anything which we can do as a board of directors with the consent of the government, we will always do that, because we don't want the consumer in telecommunications to be suffering because of some money which we can collect extra. So let us work on economics and technology.
My last question for today is, now we know and we heard that the president of Sri Lanka is taking very good moves with regard to the use of alcohols and restricting it, and also trying to impose certain levies to eradicate the menace of consumption that is quite dangerous for human health, and also improve the health sector. So what's the policy of the President, His Excellency Maithripala Sirisena, with regard to the alcohol and narcotics?
He is very hard on that. We have created a separate unit for this purpose, and we have been doing various things. We have been making awareness creation systems. We have been doing various seminars, workshops, training programs, and things like that. And we are helping all those organizations who are working towards eradicating drug menace. And we have been even taking action with the police sometimes, as it appears, against drug. He's totally against drug business. About kidney, once again we have a different setup, and we have been asking these RO water supply units, in hundreds of them have been given in various parts of the country. And then we are developing, for example, in Kandy, we are developing a separate health unit, medical unit in the general hospital in Kandy. All that is due to his interest. The President has been involved in, even personally involved in looking at these things. That is another. Then about the excessive use of chemicals in agriculture and things like that. Once again, we have a separate unit, and we are doing all those things. That is drug, chemical use, then kidney, then health development, schools development. We are giving it now. For example, yesterday or so, we had a function at Malika Vidyalaya organized by Rupahini, and then in that is about the children's road safety for children, then schools development. Sometimes when he goes to various areas, people come and ask him for assistance to develop various facilities in schools. So therefore, he is giving heed to any issue which is being brought to his notice, or which he notices himself. You need not wait till something is noticed to him. He notices things. He goes on he's a great user of media thing. He has time to read papers. I don't know how he's finding time also sometimes. And all those issues are looked at personally by him, and he has established. These things are not in the presidential secretariat earlier. These are there. So we are at it. And his policy is 0 for drugs, 0 for liquor, 0 for kidney if it is possible. That's why we are starting the KDU hospital today in Polonaru by the president.
Yes, this morning in Coffee with Dan, I had Mr. Austin Fernando. He's one of the most senior civil servants in the country. He has a Bachelor of Arts degree from University of Ceylon and a Master's degree in Business Administration from University of Sri Jayawardhanapura. Most importantly, he is the Secretary to the President, His Excellency Maithripala Sirisena, and he is also the Chairman of Telecommunication Regulatory Commission, TRC. Thank you very much, sir, for joining in Coffee with Dan today when we discuss about public administration in Sri Lanka, and hope to join again with you in another talk show like this. Thank you very much for joining.
Thank you for inviting me. All the best to you.